Hey friends, welcome to Living the KG Life, a pixie dust filled podcast. On today's episode, we are going to do a recap of the RunDisney Princess Weekend that we just came back from. So stick around, it's going to be great. All right, let's hop right in and talk about this trip. I really wanted to do this recap as soon as we got back because there's just so much to this trip and all the things that we got to do. So we're also going to break it down into two episodes. Today, we're just going to talk about the RunDisney aspect of the trip. And then we're going to have another episode where Meg's going to join me and we're going to recap kind of the rest of the trip. The parks, the hotel. So let's hop right in. This was my first RunDisney race back in person since Princess Weekend, February 2020. So going into it, I was nervous, I was excited, I had kind of like all the feels, and I knew it was gonna be a lot. Meg and I kind of had like a breakdown of how we wanted to do the trip. We did parks and things like that. But this race weekend was really about kind of like the comeback from my perspective for the races. So I was signed up for all three. I did the 5K and the Fairy Tale Challenge, which is the 10K and the half marathon. Leading up to the race weekend, training honestly was tough. Princess Weekend for folks that live in a not warm climate of any kind can be tough. So for us up here in New England, December, January, February are rough. It could be freezing, it could be ice, it could be snow. Some days we get random 60-degree days like we had recently right before we left. It's really all over the place, so the consistency is hard. So you have to find a way to train that you'll feel good. The other layer to it this time around was COVID. So there were times where there were surges happening around here, and I was like, okay, well, I can't go out for a run because there's a foot of snow on the ground, and I can't go to the gym, or I could go to the gym, but I maybe didn't feel super comfortable going to the gym, wearing a mask and, being those treadmills are so close together, things like that. So this time around, I really focused on Peloton rides as well as the regular strength training that I've been doing. So I felt fairly confident leading up to it. The last couple weeks before we went, we actually had some kind of like wild, random nice days. So I did get to go for quite a few runs and just kind of like in my neighborhood, tested out, my new Crown Athletic tanks, which I absolutely loved. I got to try out some of my new ears to make sure, that they sit well and they don't jog around too much. That's something that we've talked about, I feel like, on almost all of the RunDisney episodes so far, is that if you're going to run in a costume, a Disney bound, with ears, with anything, you really want to make sure that at least do some kind of test run, right? Do I get probably some crazy looks running in Minnie Mouse ears down the street? Sure. And or a lot of my family drives by. So usually I see at least one or two family members that beep when they drive by and they can easily see me with my ears on. But this last loop was tough. So I had gone for a run. I felt really good. I got like a little over 6 miles in, and I was like, wow, all right, my breathing feels good. My legs feel good. The next day, we had another really nice day, and I was like, let me just go for a quick shakeout jog in the neighborhood. My quads were a little tight, and guys, when I tell you, I have never been so stressed. Like, it was just a normal jog around the block, probably like, a little over a mile, nothing wild. And I was like 5 houses from my house. And all of a sudden, bam, I bit it. I fell so hard and my whole right ankle completely rolled and it was just not pretty. I had like a good half of a tennis ball lump on each side of my right ankle. Of course, I got my Minnie Mouse ears on, and one of my neighbors sees me trip and fall. He's like, oh my gosh, that was such a nasty spill. Are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Oh. Luckily, he was one of the neighbors that during the pandemic, I was doing lots of sidewalk chalk and, drawing Disney characters and stuff like that. So he probably didn't think I was like too out there with my Minnie Mouse ears on, he kind of, he knew the vibe, if you will. So I got back. It hurt so bad that I didn't even cry. When you get hurt so bad that you just get like mad? Like I was really angry. And I was like, it is Friday. I am leaving on Tuesday. I don't have time for this. What am I going to do? So I went like the tried and true RICE method. So rest, ice, compression, elevation, and really tried to take it easy as much as possible. The other thing that I did like almost immediately when I was really starting to panic was I messaged Kristen from Trippin' to Disney, who we've had on as an episode, and Jocelyn from Mom Runs Disney, who've also had on an episode. The two of them both have shared about, their own injuries or kind of like setbacks that they've had. And I was like, okay, I know they're going to give me some really great advice. Let me see what they're going to say. And I was like, SOS, I'm panicking. What am I going to do? And they both were like, it's okay. You're going to be fine. You're going to get through this. And some of the things that were really helpful that almost like in my spiral state of panic, I didn't even think about through the races, completely walk the 5, completely walk the 10, and then see how you feel for the half. And that's something really important to note. A lot of people don't know or forget that the 5K isn't even timed. So you really can walk the entire 5K and be totally fine. There's no stress about being swept or anything like that. It starts so early, you'll have plenty of time. Even if you stop for characters, stop for water, stop for the bathrooms, all of that. So that was my first okay, deep breath, I will be okay. And then in thinking about the 10K, I was like, okay, I can keep pretty close to a 16-minute mile. And if I try to really not stop for characters and I can get a pretty good spot in the corral, I should be totally fine to be away from the balloon ladies. And it all worked out. I felt great after walking the 5. I felt great after walking the 10. So then my plan was just kind of see what happens for the half and try to kind of go through some walk run intervals. So I'll talk a little bit more about all of that in a minute, like the races themselves, but that was such a great plan. And talking to both Kristen and Jocelyn and a whole bunch of other people, because I had posted on my story, SOS, I need all the pixie dust before I go. So many people were so encouraging. So thank you to everyone who DM'd me, who texted me, who sent me a reply to my story. You all made me feel so much better about how I should be approaching this race weekend. Like I said, I was just so excited. It was the first one back in person. I've been looking forward to it for literally years. And just having the support of everyone was really what got me across all of those finish lines. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. But a quick thank you to especially Kristen and Jocelyn. I can't thank you enough for truly getting me through that. Now, for the trip itself, we stayed at All Star Music for a couple nights, and then we stayed at All Star Movies for the large chunk of the trip. There's a lot of different opinions out there about value resorts and things like that. I personally love the value resorts. I don't know if it's because I've stayed there the most, throughout all of my trips at Disney, but I've had such a great time. I'm the type that I'm not usually in the room that much. So don't be scared because someone tells you that the value resorts are shitty or that they're not nice. They are great. That's kind of the quick rant TLDR that I will put out there. Really do what you think is best for you, where you feel like your money is going to be the most valued. Even with DVC, I will probably still continue to stay at value resorts on, cash trips and things like that as well. So shout out to the All-Stars. You're always going to be in my heart, that's for sure. Now, kind of how we laid out our trip was we flew in on Tuesday, we did Universal on Wednesday, which again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in an episode when we recap the whole trip with Meg. Then on Thursday, we did the expo, and then we did Epcot. If you've never done a Run Disney Expo, they are pretty wild. I mean, I've done expos for a bunch of different races here in Boston, and the Run Disney Expo is so different. So when you walk into the ESPN Wide World of Sports, you have a bunch of different buildings, and you pick your bibs up in one building, you pick up your race shirts in another building, the merch is in another building. So it's kind of all spread out. And it makes sense, right? Because there's going to be so many people in there. It took us, I think, from when we got there, 2 hours before we even got into the merch section. So our plan was to hit merch first, because especially after seeing Wine and Dine and Marathon Weekend, how crazy they were just, through people's Instagrams and things like that. We were like, okay, let's hit merch first, get what we want. Our bibs are always going to be there. Our shirts are going to be there. We'll be fine. The merch was great. I mean, I got a Spirit jersey, which is, I think, one of my Run Disney tradition or merch items that I always want to get. I got the challenge pin. That is also something that I try to get for the race weekend as much as I can. I also got a new corksicle. The colors for this race weekend were really, really pretty. A lot of the merch is kind of I'm actually wearing my Spirit jersey right now. They've got blues and kind of teal-y type colors and some pinks. They had glitter on the corksicles, which of course I really loved. And One of the things that I did this time around for the expo that I had not done in the past was I actually pre-ordered the pass holder bundle. I had no idea what was in it. I was just like, you know what? All of these expos are probably going to be wild. Everybody's going to be so excited to be back. I just want to make sure that I get something, right? I wanted to make sure that I kind of like confirm I'd at least get something regardless of anything that happened. So in that pass holder bundle, it also gave us a special pass holder pin, a magnet, and then another corksicle. It was like a tumbler. So I walked away with a lot of really great, like princess specific merch. The other thing that they had, and I don't know if they've had this before and I maybe missed them in 2019 and 2020, or maybe it was just bigger this time, but they had a whole section of like plain, or not plain, but like general Run Disney merch, where it's like black with a white running Mickey, or just like the light blue Every Mile is Magic. So that was great. And then I also got just like a plain Run Disney tank, which I really liked. So even if you're not running, there's a ton of great merch for general Run Disney things in there. So basically what they do is they have merch for each race separately. So if you're running one of the races or two of the races, you can get specific merch for those, or maybe a character or the princess for this particular weekend is one that you really love. You can have merch just for that. Then they had the Fairy Tale Challenge. Then they had the Run Disney. So there was a lot of really great stuff in there. One of the things that I ask a lot of people when they come onto the podcast is if they have a merch or collectible item that they try to get every time either they go on a trip or when they go to a Run Disney weekend. And the reason I always ask that is because there are certain things that people love to get. So like I said, for me, love a Spirit jersey. I want to always get either a challenge pin, or if I'm going to do just one race, I'll probably get that pin. For example, Springtime Surprise. I could only get into the 10K, so I'll probably get a 10K pin, add those into my pin collection. But I mean, they have wine glasses, they have mugs, they have magic bands, ornaments. They have so much good stuff there. So that's why I'm always curious what people pick up when they go, because everybody's a little bit different, right? Everybody's going to want to have different things, but there's always really, really great merch across the board. So after we did merch, we did bib pickup, we did t-shirt pickup, and at the expo, one of the things that Kristen from Trippin' to Disney was like, absolutely, definitely do this, and I think we actually talked about it on the podcast episode too, was that the KT tape booth, they will tape you for free. I cannot recommend it enough. I'm so glad that Kristen told me about that and encouraged me to go there, because I don't know what that tape does, but it's magic. Whatever that sorcery is, whatever that wizardry is, it was amazing. So they did like full ankle support on my right ankle. Now, before that, I had been wearing a compression sleeve and swapping around with a brace. So I had been kind of like trying out different things and, giving my ankle room to breathe and all that jazz. But nothing worked as good as that tape. Nothing. I felt great immediately afterwards walking. And like I said, we walked around the expo, all around Wide World of Sports. And then we walked around Epcot the whole rest of that day. And my ankle felt so much better. So if you're either dealing with an injury or you ever run into an issue where like you're a little bit sore or anything like that, look into KT tape. You can buy it on their website. They have a ton of videos on YouTube of how to tape different areas. And if you're at an expo or any kind of like vendor booth somewhere and they have KT tape and they will do it for you, highly, highly, highly recommend. It was amazing. Like I said, they do it for free. You can buy tape there if you want. I was like, I feel like I have to buy tape now because like this shit is magic and I need it. And I'm so glad I did, because we did end up swapping out. Like I took the tape off a couple days later, and Meg was able to retape my ankle for me and actually showed me how to do it myself, which is awesome. So if I can do it, you can do it. I promise. It was amazing. Like 10 out of 10, a million stars, all the positive reviews and recommendations. KT tape for the win. So after the expo, went to our room, dropped our stuff, and we went over to Epcot. Moral of the story is, out of all of that walking, even before the very first race, my ankle still felt great. So again, KT tape, incredible. Do it. Check them out. They are amazing. Literally like saved my ankle through this entire weekend. So let's talk about the races themselves. Now, what I have decided to do moving forward, because Princess is going to be like my staple. My plan is to, for as long as I'm able, go to Princess, participate in all 3 races. With the different themes, some people are so creative with their outfits and how they put them together and what the vibe is. Like there was one whole group that was princesses, but they were cheerleaders. There was another whole group that was the princesses, but they were like superhero princesses. Those were so incredibly creative, and I really, really love that whole vibe. So what I've decided is that for each weekend, I'm going to stick to the theme of that race. Some people like to go the complete opposite and do, a totally different character, but I think I really want to stick to the theme. I just feel like it's going to be easier for me to plan both for Princess and then also for any of the other race weekends I am able to get into. I also have to really run in comfortable clothes. I really hope that maybe someday I can get into some of those like really fun, crazy costumes, at least for maybe like a 5K. But I really just do ears, leggings, and then a shirt that's either like a bound of that princess or has some kind of theme there. So I did Cinderella for the 5K, Tiana for the 10K, and Mulan for the half. And I'll make sure that in the pictures that I have on Instagram, I tag those shops because you should definitely check them out. I got mine from Magic Mountain Ears, from Crafty Olivia Cuties, and Mouse Trends. Highly recommend. They were all so comfortable. They were really light, which is huge, and they all stayed on. So another key there. For the 10K and the half, I wore my new Crown Athletics flow tanks. I cannot say enough good things. They were so comfortable. They both had kind of like not a mesh, but like a really thin material on the back. So Tiana's had kind of like lily pads on it. And then Mulan's had like cherry blossoms on it, but they were so light. So you got a lot of really great airflow on the back, which was awesome. Really loved those. And I cannot recommend all of those shops enough. Like I said, I'll tag them actually both in the show notes for this episode and on Instagram so you can check all of those out. And then this time around, so what I tried to do is I tried to approach obviously these races a little bit differently. Like I mentioned, I walked the 5K, I walked the 10K, and I did a walk run interval for the half. Now, the 5K, I was like, I'm just going to cruise. This is going to be great. And I actually got to stop for some characters, which I actually had never done before on any of the Run Disney race weekends before. I've just been so nervous that I just kind of go. I'm like, as long as I finish, it's going to be great. And that's all that really matters. But this time for the 5K, I got to stop for some characters. That was really fun. And then the 10K, I started off with Tara and with Megan. And I walked with Tara. We had a great time. We laughed. We cruised through. It was so much fun. And I can't thank Tara enough, one, for just walking the race with me and just kind of being such an incredible support through the entire weekend. So thank you, Tara. You are the best. I really don't think I would have made it through the races without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, because I was walking, but there was that time limit. I was a little too nervous stopping for characters there. What was also really exciting about this 10K is that we actually got to go through Hollywood Studios. That was the very first time that I've been able to run through Hollywood Studios. So far, I've only been able to go through Magic Kingdom and Epcot. So now we have Hollywood Studios, and then hopefully sometime soon I'll be able to get through Animal Kingdom as well. That would be super cool. For the half, it was really great because Tara and I went through the half together as well. And we made it to, I want to say maybe like mile 7 or 8, maybe even closer to 9. And we caught up with, or they caught up with us, I should say, the 3:30 Pacers. And we stuck with them for a little bit. So I had the last few miles by myself, which was nice, but was also a whole different test of my motivation to finish this race. I had so many people throughout the races that sent text messages, sent DMs, sent video messages, audio messages, funny gifts to just keep me going. So thank you to everyone who took the time to do that. I can't thank you enough because that is truly what got me through the rest of the race. Especially, I want to give a shout out to my cousin Tassie, who has been on the podcast, and you'll probably hear from her soon again. Tassie is, as you know, a big Disney person as well. We finished the half marathon together at Princess 2020, so I was sad to not have her with me, but this girl got up way too early and was texting me the entire morning. She was tracking me and was like, here's where you are. You're doing great. Keep going. She also, I gave her the bib number for one of the balloon ladies. So she was giving me updates as to like how far behind me they were. So Tassie, huge shout out to you. Thank you for all of that support because that was something that also really pushed me to keep going. You were with me in spirit, but also with me via text. But then on the half, I also, again, with the time, also the heat of that weekend, like I just need to finish and get all across the finish line. As we were coming around, and for those listening who have run Disney races, it was like almost towards where like the buses are for like that sweep point, and you start to panic. But Genie was there and he had no one in line. And I was like, you know what? I know that the balloon ladies are only a few minutes behind me, but I gotta stop for Genie. So I got one character photo during the half and it was with Genie. I was really, really happy about that. My goal for any kind of distance at all is just to finish. Get me across the finish line. I don't care how I get there. I don't care what it looks like. As long as I do it, I'm going to feel so accomplished and so proud of myself and so motivated that I just want to finish. And I did that. So, woo, that was the exciting part, right? Like finished all 3 races. I was able to really enjoy the 5K, really enjoy the 10K. The half was definitely tough. I was really worried about my ankle. I was really worried about my time. There was all sorts of craziness on the morning of the half with transportation was late. So the corrals were a little bit hectic. I didn't get as far up into the corral as I would have liked to for the half, which is something to note. Regardless of how you're going to approach the race, really know that your corral placement, both like which corral you're in, but also where in your corral you are, is going to impact your race with the time limit. So definitely keep that in mind. This is only the second half marathon that I've done, but both times, and I think everybody will talk about this, mile like 7 to 9 is a tough spot where you're like, I'm halfway there, I can do this. And then mile like 9 to 11, you're like, FML, I really don't want to finish this. And again, then we had the heat. And then so much of this race for me was mental, like, I can do it. I can do it. My ankle feels good. Don't get too nervous about it. You're going to be fine. They had a lot of hydration stops where they had water and Powerade. I always will run with a bottle of water. It almost now is kind of like a safety blanket for me. Sometimes I finish the whole thing by the end. Sometimes I only drink half of it. But having that many hydration stations was great because I could use those and then I had my own water to really keep myself hydrated throughout the race. Especially, again, from being in the Northeast, the humidity and the heat is just so different down there in Florida. So I know Jocelyn talked about that in our podcast episode 2 of like really thinking about how you can train and prepare for the difference in climate. Stay hydrated the best way that you need to. Speaking of hydration, one of the things that I was really looking forward to doing, and I was so close, was in Epcot. By the time we got in there, the booths and the kiosks were open. And Jocelyn and I also talked about this where people, including her, have stopped for drinks in Epcot on the way in. She says she's making a new tradition that she's going to stop for coffee, but I really wanted to stop for a beer because by the end of it, I was like, hell yeah, I'm in Epcot. I'm almost here. I'm going to cross. I need a beer, but I didn't have my ID. That is another important learning lesson for me. I'm going to bring my ID next time so that if those kiosks are open, I'm getting a beer. I won't even care what kind of beer it is. I'm usually pretty picky about my beer. I won't even care. I'm going to drink it. So that's something that I've set as a goal for next time. Grab a beer, cross the finish line with it, and just keep it going. Something else that I wanted to talk about that a couple people have asked about, but also I usually ask people about on our Run Disney episodes is how we fueled pre and post races. One of the things that I've also really been trying to do a lot of the last few trips is try new things. Everybody that knows me knows I'm like a creature of habit. I'm a pretty plain eater. So it's very easy for me to like eat it at the same places every time I go somewhere or, kind of like have a routine. So I'm trying really hard to break it up a little bit, especially over the last few years. I've had a lot of trips to Disney. So I'm trying to, expand my horizons a little bit. So this time we did break it up a little. And the night before the 5K, we did Drink Around the World. But we had a reservation at Via Napoli for like a late lunch kind of dinner. If you have not been to Via Napoli, you have to go. The pizza is incredible. Meg and I each had our own individual pizza. It was exactly the amount of carbs I needed. It was perfect. And it's so, so good. So if you haven't gone, again, 10 out of 10, all the stars, recommend go eat at Via Napoli at Epcot. I think after every single race, I think I eat Mickey waffles like every day. Meg can probably confirm when we do the other episode, but I literally had Mickey waffles at least 3 days of the trip. I literally could just eat them forever. They're so good. So then the night after the 5K, the night before the 10K, we went to Magic Kingdom that day and we ate at Tony's Town Square in Magic Kingdom, which I actually don't think I've eaten there before. I got the chicken parm. It was so good. And again, exactly what I needed. A nice like penne pasta with the chicken parm. It was delicious. Then the day after the 10K, we went to Hollywood Studios and we actually ate really good the day of the 10K. So we did Hollywood and Vine for lunch, which is a really great character dining. If you haven't been there before, it's super cute. They also do different like seasonal outfits. So around like Halloween time, they'll be dressed up in some Halloween costumes. Christmas time, they're in kind of like Christmassy seasonal type outfits. They were just in their regular Hollywood glam outfits for this one. But we did, I think, like a beef tenderloin. It was really, really good. And then I had an amazing, I think it was a s'mores chocolate dessert. Also highly recommend that. It was delicious. Then that night, we went and had dinner at Mama Melrose, also in Hollywood Studios. Also got chicken parm. I was just kind of like chicken parm was just on the brain. I think because I felt so good during the 10K, having had that the night before. So I was like, I'm just going to stick with it. It was also a fantastic meal. So if you have not eaten there, the rolls there, check. Pasta and chicken parm, check. Mama Melrose was great. Now, before the half, like I said, we ate at Mama Melrose. It was delicious. I get so nervous for, again, any distance. So before a 5K, before like a loop around my neighborhood, I like can't eat. I just get so, my anxiety stresses my stomach out even more than food. So I usually do like kind of like a fasted cardio type of situation. And I ate a massive meal when we got back from the half. Again, Mickey waffles, eggs, sausage, home fries. It was delicious. And then that night, we ate dinner at Steakhouse 71. So I met Tara and our other friend, Megan, at Steakhouse 71. The food there was delicious. If you have not been to Steakhouse 71 yet, it used to be The Wave, so it's over in the Contemporary. The food was great. I got like, it was either a 6 or an 8-ounce filet, potatoes, and a salad. It was really, really good. The portions weren't huge, which I feel like by the end of the night of the half, like at first I was starving. And then after I ate, I was like, okay, that was actually like a perfect portion. I felt really good. So it wasn't like, those giant Disney portions that you're used to, like a nice restaurant type size, right? So it was good. Then Monday, so the day after the half was, I feel like the day that I was actually the most hungry. Like I was starving at that point. By the time brunch came on Monday, I was like, I am ready to eat everything. And Tara and I went to Topolino's, which again, if you have not been there, it is hands down one of my new favorite restaurants on property. It's in the Riviera Resort. It is character dining for the breakfast to lunch time. It is so cute. We saw one of the funniest character interactions I have ever seen. Across from us was a table, and one of the girls, it was her birthday, and she had a birthday pin on, and Donald was doing his Donald thing and flirting, and Daisy saw it, and Daisy was pissed. She was pissed. She was not having any of it. They were in the middle of their song and dance routine. So if you've been to Topolino's, they're, walking around doing their dance, and literally Daisy just dropped her hands and just walked. Was like, F this, I'm done. I'm not dancing, I'm not singing. And she did like the 2-finger, like her eyes to the other girl's eyes, like, I'm watching you. And I was like, damn, Daisy is like, she is on one today. So we just were cracking up. We talked to the girl afterwards and sent her some of the videos that we got. It was amazing. We just were laughing so hard through the brunch. The food there is incredible. Cannot recommend it enough. Do it. Another major beyond how much I can put into this podcast, thank you that I need to shout out is to my best friend Meg, who came down for this race weekend with me. She has been an incredible support. She's a great friend across the board, but this weekend she was doing everything from like, you hang here, I'll go grab what we needed at the cafe and I'll bring it back. She made a Living the KG Life t-shirt for me a while back just to have one, and she made herself one and said it's going to be great on the back. She wore it to the half. She was right on Main Street, right around mile 5, cheering us on. It was like the best mid-race push that we needed, and then she was also at Epcot at the finish. So Meg, thank you for just being such an incredibly supportive and encouraging friend and someone who will do 2 trips to Disney in a month for just being so incredibly supportive and helpful and making sure that I was taking care of myself the best way possible to finish these races, but also just really making sure that we had a really great time. I really hope that in the future, even if I'm not going to be running, I'd really love to go and spectate a race. And we're hoping that maybe for the springtime surprise, the 10 miler, we're actually staying at the boardwalk. So hopefully, if the 10 miler goes through the boardwalk, I really would like to spectate that section. Also, Kristen over at Running in Makeup, both on Instagram and YouTube, has some really incredible Run Disney content. One of the videos Meg and I actually watched before we came down was about spectating a race. So if you ever want to go down and spectate a race, or you happen to be down there and there's a race happening, you can get some good tips on how to spectate. So key takeaways for me from Princess 2022. Number 1 is going to be very, very careful a couple days before your race, before you travel, because honestly, the mental stress of my ankle and my knee was far more painful and frustrating than it would have been normally just completing all 3 of these races. It is a lot, right? You're doing the 5K on Friday, the 10K on Saturday, and the half on Sunday. So your feet are going to be tired, your legs are going to be tired, your back, your butt, everything's going to be a little achy, but it is so, so worth it. These races are unlike any race anywhere else, and the more you can eliminate any additional overwhelm, frustration, stress, obviously that's in your control, do that so that you can just really appreciate everything that's happening around you, from the characters to your fellow runners to the volunteers and the supporters on the race. I mean, there are people with cowbells and giant Mickey hands, incredible posters. They had marching bands. These races truly are better than any other race that you're going to do, in my personal Disney loving opinion. It really is something special. Like I said, even if you don't go to run, go and spectate, because the vibe at these races is, again, just something so magical and so special and so different that you really, really should check them out. The next takeaway that I have is I really loved trying some new restaurants this time around. Even if the food, like I got chicken parm twice at 2 different places. Chicken parm is not anything wild to try, right? But trying a new restaurant also made it kind of exciting, and it wasn't just kind of the same old for me. So I'm glad I've been kind of branching out a little bit. So my second takeaway is definitely to keep trying new places. I loved the food at all the places that we tried this trip. And I think that was a big part of why I felt so great as well, because we walked around the parks all day after the 5K and the 10K. So, I mean, were the bottoms of my feet throbbing and a little sore? Absolutely. But I could have felt a lot more sore. So make sure that you get out there and you're trying some new places and do what makes you feel the most comfortable. My third takeaway is that I will probably, for the foreseeable future, when I'm doing a 5K, I think that's going to be the race that I stop for character photos. Unless, obviously, there's something really rare or not a super long line at some of the longer races. Like they had during the half in Magic Kingdom, there was a spot where it was Gaston, the Beast, and Belle. But again, I was just too nervous to stop. So that's going to be something that I think I will try to keep, like the 5K, do as many photos as I can, but also continue to train to a faster pace so that if I do see a character that I really want to stop for on any of the distances, I can. So keep that in mind too. Really having a clear goal of what these races are, like what you're doing it for me is just to finish. You get to run through the parks, they're incredible, and it's unlike any other race that you're going to do. Sometimes it's just for the vibe. Some people love these incredible costumes. Some people just want to finish. Your goal is your goal, and we're going to be here to support you for it. So another takeaway or kind of suggestion that I would have is I usually try to make the last day of my trip a stop back at Magic Kingdom. And I'll bring all my medals with me and take medal photos. I would also say take your medal photos throughout the whole trip. Like take some with each of your solo medals, but definitely go back to your favorite park, whichever one it is, and take some really cool medal photos in the parks with all of your medals together. Some of the photo pass photographers would be like, ooh, yes, Yes, photo shoot. And like they will go all around the world to get you some really great shots. So make sure you add that into your plan if you're going to go for a Run Disney weekend. So that's the scoop on So that's the scoop on Run Disney Princess Weekend 2022. It feels so good to be back at these races in person. I'm really excited for the springtime surprise coming up in a few weeks. A whole different vibe for that trip. And that's one of the things that I really love about Disney, but also that I really love about this podcast is that every Disney trip is different. People ask me all the time, like, oh my gosh, you're going back to Disney? I'm like, yeah, but it's a different trip this time. So, for example, we went in December and it was me, my mom, my sister and brother-in-law, the 3 kids. We met up with Katie and Brian. That's a totally different trip than the trip that we just did, Meg and I, for Run Disney, right? Then when we go back in like a month for Springtime Surprise, that's going to be a totally different trip. So you can really have a totally different experience even though you're going to the same place. Sometimes even if you're going for the same reason, right? So February was for Run Disney Princess. End of March into April is also going to be a Run Disney, but it's going to be 1, a different theme, 2, different races, and 3, a whole different group that's going. So really keep that in mind too, is that even though you might be going back to Disney, quote unquote, you can always make your trip different. You can always try new places to eat. You can try new things like a run. You can try new rides. You can try new resorts. You can try different activities at your resorts or at the park. So keep that in mind too. There's always going to be something new to try, something new to ride, something new to do. And that's truly one of the best parts of going to Disney. Hopefully you enjoyed this recap of the Run Disney Princess Weekend. Make sure you're following us on Instagram at Living the KG Life, and you have subscribed on your favorite podcast streaming platform. We release new episodes every Monday, and throughout our Mouse Madness tournament that we currently are hosting the month of March, we will have new bonus episodes dropping every Friday as well. So make sure you're following on all of your favorite platforms and stick around. It's going to be great.